Hey guys, it's Cherish from the Motley News, and I'm here today with a book review, the spectacle book that I told you about a couple of episodes ago, The Astonishing Life of Benga, and this book was written by Pamela Newkirk. She is kind of amazing. This is an author who goes out of her way to do the research that nobody else was planning to do. I think by writing this book, she validated this young man's experience and righted some wrongs. But before we get into that, let me just give you an overview of what this plot is about. It is a true story. This is nonfiction. The book is about Benga, the young man in question here, who was kidnapped from his Congo home. He lived in the Congo. This is, turn of the century, 1900s. He was brought to America to be put on display in the Bronx Zoo. And when I mean put on display, I mean like an actual exhibit. He lived in the monkey/great apes hall of the Bronx Zoo. He shared a cage at one time with an orangutan. So you can imagine how dehumanizing, humiliating, and traumatic this was. In, I believe, 1904, maybe 1906, blacks were already treated a certain kind of way post-Civil War. Reconstruction was kind of a bust. And then all of a sudden, this happens. So, this young man is being put on display. Whites from all over are buying tickets, coming near and far to see him, to jeer at him, to throw things at him, to watch him do tricks. I mean, this is a poor young boy who is just like, stuck and being goggled at. So, the only reason why he was put on display is that he was an African young man who they called a pygmy. I don't think that is the appropriate term to use for the people of his tribe, but anything over or under 5 feet was considered an anomaly, and so that warranted him to be kidnapped and put on display. There you go. And eventually, black community leaders of New York saw what was happening and, pushed for his release into their care, to their schools, so they could educate this young man and, hopefully one day get him back to Africa. That never happened, unfortunately. Benga, didn't make it back to Africa. He ended up in Lynchburg, Virginia, before he died. So, if you're expecting a happy ending, you're not going to get it. That is not what this book is for. This book is to educate you. This book is to educate you on matters of what science was like back then, how we can trace a lot of our ideas today concerning black health and black science back to this really, really racist time. Where the white community was making a lot of these scientific rules up for the rest of humanity. You're also going to be learning about colonialism. This is right around the time before World War I, where Europeans were just kind of divvying up Africa, the continent, and seeing what territories they could use for natural resources. And the natural resource in question in this book was Congo's rubber. And if you remember correctly in your history education, the Belgians got to that first. So King Leopold and his Belgian hitmen were raiding the Congo area and making the people there just really miserable. By miserable, I mean he was killing people, he was maiming people, he was torturing them, all in an effort for them to collect their own resource, and so he could send it back to Europe. And this is a good reminder for people who think that white superiority is actually a thing and that Western civilization couldn't have happened without people of color. This is a good reminder of that is bullshit. Because without slave labor and resources that weren't even located on your continent, you guys wouldn't have much at all anyway. So if we think about rubber in the Congo, and there are plenty of other things that Africa has under its, grounds. Today we can think of oil in a lot of these countries or off the coast of Nigeria. But we also remember sugar. Sugar in the Caribbean resulted in a lot of horrible slave acts where people were brought over just to harvest that and feed the rest of Europe. In the American South, cotton. So you can't really say that whites around the world have built up the world as we see it without remembering the terrible things that they did to get where they are now. And it sounds like the Industrial Revolution could not have happened without some pretty terrible slave labor. Anyway, all of that is to say this is a really fascinating book, and Pamela Newkirk does her job as a scholar and writer by telling the story that should have been told ages ago about this young man. And his astonishing life is not just about him, but it's about white supremacy in the scientific community, white supremacy and colonialism. Back to the scientific community, the man who kidnapped Benga was trying his best to leave a mark in the world of science and exploration. He started off as a missionary who was going to go to Africa, but that quickly turned into, him wanting to be a moneymaker. Once he got to Africa, he saw what kind of resources they had, and he needed to be a part of that. And if that meant selling humans or animals or, buying up land, then that's what he did. And that's how he got his hands on this young man, Benga. And that's not even his real whole name. In the book you will see how many different ways this guy has been identified, because nobody really quite knew who he was. And so we learn a lot about eugenics. I think I may have mentioned that before. Based on brain size, skin hues, we decide who was the most intelligent and who was more inferior. It's all bunk. It's all just really absurd ways to measure humanity. Well, most of the stuff was thought up of in the Enlightenment era in America. Those ideas went back to Europe and were really pounced on by our favorite fascist, Hitler. Hitler got a lot of his ideas from American scientists, and that's really upsetting. And you know what happens when he uses those ideas to exterminate a group of people that he felt were inferior. So we got a lot of stuff to make up for, and I'm not really sure if any of that is possible, but man, is it really interesting to learn about. I say that we cannot understand or right the wrongs of a racist today without understanding where those ideas came from way back in the past. I'm sorry if I explain this book really fast and really in a jumbly manner, but it's really exciting. There's a whole lot in here that I'm not telling you because I either can't remember or I just want to keep this video under 10 minutes. But I suggest that you go out and you read it yourself. Go to the library, go to the bookstore, whatever you do. Check this book out. Again, it is called Spectacle: The Astonishing Life of Benga by Pamela Newkirk. Check it out. The next time I see you guys, I will be doing another book type video. Hopefully, it's one of the ones that I had on my list of goal reading for 2017. But until then, you guys take it easy and happy reading. Bye!